Greetings, Merkle Forest. I'm Patrick Smith. Welcome back to Disenthrall. Today we have special guest Jeremy Kauffman, founder and CEO of LBRY. What is LBRY, sir?
LBRY is the freest way to share content on the internet.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
It's great to be here with you.
So, Disenthrall has been publishing content, linked to YouTube for at least a year now, I think. And I am slutty, might be the no. I am loose when I see a new platform coming up. I jump on it. I put our content on it. I early adopt as much as I can because I want to try out new things. And out of all the alternative platforms that we have had over the past 3 years, LBRY is the one that it just worked. And all the other ones usually have some kind of bugs or some beta or some things you got to remember, and they're a pain in the ass. LBRY, man, I just clicked some buttons on their website. It synced all of my back content from YouTube. And I was like, what's happening? This is easy. And since then, you continue to pull my content and I don't even have to worry about it. And it's just all of my videos show up on LBRY and people can watch it. I'm amazed. How did you pull that off?
Well, at first, just thank you. I care a lot about products and how they work and wanting them to work well. And you gave me about the biggest compliment you could give me. So we've been at it for a really long time as part of how we've got there, right? We've been working on this for more than 3 years and we've been relentlessly improving it basically every single day. So that's, you create a beautiful sculpture, not with one or two hacks, but by thousands and millions of different minor movements and minor adjustments, and I think that's what we've been doing with LBRY.
And you even rewarded me for bringing in a subscriber base. I got a little bonus at the beginning for having the number of subscribers that we have at the time. And
well, we should tell people right now. I mean, they're already listening to this. This is going to be on YouTube. This is going to be on YouTube and LBRY. So if you're listening on YouTube, they can go over right now, be watching it on LBRY, earn Patrick a little something extra, earn yourself a little something extra, and support a company that actually stands for free speech.
This guy's a voluntarist. The founder and CEO of this company is a voluntarist. Is that accurate?
I think that's the most accurate word for my beliefs. I will say not everyone at LBRY is a voluntarist. The only political belief that we ask our team members to hold is that they unequivocally support free speech. So it's a free speech platform. You can find socialists on LBRY, and they're welcome as long as they're not trying to censor others.
So I'll probably do a separate video later, kind of pimping our LBRY channel. I haven't really talked about it much yet. All of our content is there. It loads really fast, so it's not like you're downgrading. Turn off YouTube right now. Close YouTube, go to disenthrall.me/platforms, find our LBRY channel, and watch the rest of this video there and just experience what it's like. I do have a question, though. It is different than YouTube.
It is.
When you watch a video, that video actually downloads to your computer and you have the whole thing locally, and that takes up space. And can you talk about the difference in there and maybe the bonuses and negatives?
Sure. So first, actually, we need to say it depends on the apps that you're using. So LBRY.tv, which is the web app and probably the easiest way to use LBRY, although not necessarily the most secure or private, but by far the easiest, that does not download anything.
Oh.
The desktop app, which is the peer-to-peer app, the fully in control, I don't want anyone to touch my stuff and it's all mine, is going to download the content when you access it, and it's going to share it with others. That is configurable, so you can alter that behavior or limit the disk space or make various adjustments to that behavior, but that's the default because we want you to be helping the rest of the network thrive.
So if your company disappears tomorrow, people would still be able to watch my content because other people would have it on their computers from having watched it?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And then there are also some users, community members, some companies who choose to participate at an even more robust level. So they're not just, seeding what they're actually watching. They're trying to actively suck stuff down, make sure that it's getting backed up, and make sure that it's continuing to be hosted.
Is there any rewards for those people doing?
There are some minor rewards for this. We'll be rolling out much more rewards for this year. There are supposed to be economic incentives for hosting. It turned out so many people just we're hosting for free that you don't make very much by default. So we're looking to tune some of this a little bit in terms of how it's designed. So you're not going to make a ton for contributing your disk space right now. I think you will make more before the end of the year, but it still feels good to help the network out, and you're going to earn something just for doing other stuff. So it's still a good idea. I would say if you're the kind of person who says Coinbase is fine, go ahead and use LBRY.tv. If you're the kind of person who says I run my own Bitcoin wallet and I don't trust Coinbase, get the desktop app. That's where I'd put it.
So we should probably back up a little bit. It's a content hosting platform, right?
Yeah. So maybe I probably didn't do a great job. We'll split the blame. And dessert. The way that LBRY works is it's a peer-to-peer way. It's an open, decentralized peer-to-peer way of discovering, distributing, and optionally purchasing digital content. And so that's the idea. We wanted to, and why that first compliment you gave me was so important is I said, well, I want to match the user experience of these other places, of the YouTubes, of the Amazons, of these other places. And a lot of people who come on LBRY, they actually don't know there's a blockchain involved, at least at first. And they're coming on because they heard it's just a cool place to watch stuff. And that means a lot to me because blockchain should be a how. It shouldn't be a why. Like blockchain isn't intrinsically good, in my opinion. It should be enabling something that is good. And I think, free disintermediated content sharing, so that you own your channel, no one else owns that channel. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's an important thing. And that's part of why we're doing what we do.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, I had, I adopted DTube and I had kind of a really rough time getting that to work and working out the kinks and all that stuff. And I think then they switched platforms and they just left literally my entire content library behind. They didn't try and migrate it over or anything like that. And so I'm done with that. Like I don't have your system just functions and it functions well and it functions quickly. Can you host other things besides video on it?
That's right. And I mentioned this in my talk that I gave here at Anarchapulco today. So I said, what do these two things have in common? And on the left, it was the FGC 9. Will your audience be familiar with this product?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. So 3D firearms CAD files. And on the right was Naomi Brockwell. And I said, what do these both have in common? And the answer is they're both available on LBRY. You can find CAD files. You can find text content, blog posts. You can find books. You can find some memes. It's probably about 80 to 90% video because we have emphasized that as a use case, but we're seeing also as the user experience has gotten better because we're now like, okay, let's make text work better than it did before. We are seeing an uptick in non-video content.
Okay, so now I want to ask him some more technical questions. So if that's not your thing, just bear with us. We'll get back to some cool questions later, but I want to dive in a little bit deeper for a little while. So it is two sort of layers, right? It's the crypto blockchain that handles the token. You call it a token, the coin, whatever, and the transactions, and it actually logs the existence of the videos and things like that, right? Yep. And then you have a second layer that that actually handles the content distribution. Can you describe maybe those two in more detail?
Totally. So, assuming you're familiar with BitTorrent, or loosely, not necessarily intimately, but you understand it's this peer-to-peer network. Our data network is quite similar to the way that the BitTorrent data network works. There may even be an announcement coming later this year about BitTorrent, but I can't officially say anything right now. And the core problems with BitTorrent's a beautiful technology. It's elegant. If you dive into how does a DHT work, I remember learning about it in grad school. Actually, I was in grad school for computer science. I later dropped out to start a company. I was in grad school for computer science, and we were going over the BitTorrent algorithm and how it worked. And I'd never learned how it worked before. And I was like, wow, this is brilliant stuff. And I remember the same thing happened to me when I learned about Bitcoin. Wow, this is brilliant stuff. This is really elegant. This is clever. And but BitTorrent has some problems. And I've been into this stuff for a long time. Even before BitTorrent existed, I was using other peer-to-peer technologies. The problems with it are threefold. One is discovery. The data is decentralized, but how you find it is not. You're going to websites. There's not a coherent view of the network, and that's what the LBRY blockchain provides. We now have a coherent view that is an agreed view. Everyone knows everything that's available on it. Second is incentives. Truthfully, I do think we have a bit more to grow as a company here. I thought my answers I gave earlier about that, it kind of works. It needs to be better, but we want to fix the incentive problem, and we think we're already better than BitTorrent. Also, to be clear. And by incentive problem, I mean BitTorrent works because people are nice. It's wonderful that things work because people are nice. It's nice also if there's an incentive for people to be nice. Actually, BitTorrent works because people are nice, or even more so because they don't understand what they're doing.
Or the trackers that they're members of have rules that make them be nice.
Also true, but you can go on to, I'm not going to name a site necessarily, but you can go on to a shadier BitTorrent site, and that stuff will be there. And people are hosting that not getting any value. If anything, they're only putting themselves at legal risk by hosting some of those things, and people do it. The third one is legitimacy, right? And BitTorrent, while it's beautiful technologically, it's not beautiful necessarily in terms of how it's used. Aspects of it are, but legitimate creators haven't really adopted it. You don't find people actively putting all of their content out that they're making on BitTorrent. I think people could do that, but they don't. And so with LBRY, by adding payments, by adding identity, right? So you have a channel, you have the keys to your channel, you can now cryptographically sign your publishes. By building out a set of APIs that does the kinds of things that you need to do to build these YouTube-like services, we think we've solved an important, we think that's the key to getting legitimate adoption. And look, we already have it. I mean, we have 25,000 YouTubers who are at least co-publishing. We have hundreds, if not thousands of original creators, definitely thousands of original creators. So, you know, it's not this den of shady stuff. You do get some stuff that's in legal gray areas. You know, these firearms files, my understanding is as long as you're not making them in the state of New Jersey, they are legal and they are legal to distribute. But it's a gray area. And so some sites don't want to touch it. You know, there's other, I don't want to start necessarily talking about all the dark stuff on LBRY, but there's videos of recent attacks. Yeah, we'll get to that later.
We'll get to that later. That's part 3. So let me ask you a question. Why not IPFS? Why BitTorrent?
Well, did IPFS exist in 2016 when we were starting LBRY?
I'm pretty sure.
Did it?
Yeah. Okay.
It may not have been on our radar. I mean, to me, IPFS and BitTorrent are like largely similar. Like IPFS is, I think, quite possibly a better BitTorrent, but like content addressing was not the biggest problem with BitTorrent. The biggest problem is the things I just said. And so IPFS may be a better BitTorrent. I think the people working on it are intelligent and capable people, but from a user experience perspective, IPFS is not fixing what I saw as the problems with this tech.
So the blockchain stores what? When I upload a video, what does it do?
So all the stuff that Bitcoin does. Also, metadata. That's the key thing that we've added. And in fact, from a technical perspective, LBRY has an entirely parallel Merkle tree specifically for storing metadata. That way, when you're running an SPV wallet, which all clients are, you can't expect people to download tens of gigabytes to run to access YouTube. They can verify content-related operations. Is this metadata correct? Is this price correct? Am I being told the right information? And that way, you can move between wallet servers. You don't have to trust. Then when you're running an SPV client connected to a wallet server, SPV is simple payment verification, thin wallets. So that was why we wanted this parallel. That was the strongest reason why. There's some other reasons that we ended up doing it this way, but that was probably the biggest one.
So what happens? I upload a video, like what gets recorded to the tree? How does that facilitate other people finding the content? How does that tell them what to go looking for on the data layer?
Right. So this publish operation, which is one of the new opcodes that we made, it's putting that metadata, it's serializing it via a format called protobuf, basically an efficient way of taking this data and compressing it and writing it in a straight way. And that data, we define the metadata structure. So we have a definition of like, this is all the metadata that can be there. And that metadata gets embedded in that publish, in that blockchain transaction. And then that metadata is on the blockchain forever. I didn't get into other stuff about the channel signing, but that's also just essentially part of the metadata structure.
Okay. And so other people, when they go searching for a video, how do you index the entire blockchain for searches?
Yeah, well, you then take two different ways. So basically your wallet server is doing it. Your wallet server, when wallet servers have full copies of the blockchain. So you go to your wallet server and you can say things like, what's on the other side of this URL? What content do you know about that has this tag? What content have you seen that's popular over the last week? These are all things that your wallet server can answer because it has a full copy of the blockchain. It's tracking the activity that it's seeing, or in some cases, that activity is on the blockchain itself. And then it can return that information to your client. Your client can verify it and know that it's correct. So you can effectively, connect to any number of these things. And you're not dependent on us to be this provider of search, of discovery.
So what's stored in the record on the blockchain that then allows me to download it via BitTorrent?
So in a decentralized network, not even in a decentralized network, in any network, right? Strong DRM does not exist. You cannot distribute a file to someone and prevent someone from copying it. Even our best tech, you can still capture it, when it's going to your monitor or other things.
Can somebody tell Disney that just real quick?
Yeah. DRM, it's such an emperor has no clothes situation. And I'm honestly confused as to how businesses continue to do this and pour so much money into it, because it doesn't work. You can go on to a shady torrent site and type in the name of any film and you can find it. Every single one. So our attitude is to sort of just embrace this, not saying that we facilitate infringing, but we make it so that by default, the way that our software is configured, it's going to enforce payment. If someone technically sophisticated wanted to modify it to cheat, that is possible, because you cannot build a decentralized system and strongly enforce that kind of thing.
So there is no DRM on the content I upload for behind a paywall.
So the content that you upload is encrypted, so that if people are making pure data calls to get the data, they can't access it. They need to also make a call to get the key, and that is supposed to be enforced. There are ways of doing that even stronger that would break decentralization. So we've designed a system, we haven't implemented it yet, where you can have a centralized key server. So you would put in the metadata and say, okay, only return key, this server is going to be the only server that returns keys. So we think we may, if this ended up becoming a problem on the network, we think we could potentially evolve it to add more. We haven't done so because, as far as we can tell, it's not happening, right? It's just not happening. And part of our whole attitude is to just embrace reality rather than try to pretend reality doesn't exist. And so, make sure things are clearly labeled is another big thing, right? When I researched this, I actually researched this when I was starting the company. What is the proportion of people that infringe on copyright to access content, and why do they do it? And my research led me to approximately the following conclusions, which was about 70% of people won't do it. They think that it's wrong, and they just won't do it. So if it's not available legitimately, they're just not going to do it. 60, 70% of people. The next is 20, 30% of people that do it of convenience. And I think these are the people that you need to worry about, because these are essentially the fence sitters. These are the people, I'm in this group, okay? I will admit.
Me too. Me too.
I will admit, my wife wanted to watch Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey wasn't out in the U.S. for 6 months. I didn't wait.
Yeah.
I'm coming out.
Market failure.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one group. And for this group, what's important is you're just being clear. So don't label some. Don't let people pretend that something is that it isn't, and that kind of thing. And then you got 10% of people, they're just gonna pirate. They're just gonna infringe. They don't care. And so it's maybe if it was a penny, they wouldn't do it, but they don't really feel much of a moral compulsion to pay creators. So I think the real audience we're talking about is that 20 to 30% in the middle, and how do we design software so that they're encouraged to do the right thing? And our answer is make it clear. And if it's, not available legitimately, then people will do what they're going to do.
Okay, so now let's talk about the dark side of the internet, because I have this. I've interviewed other creators, like we have Float. Have you heard of the Float social network? I had a really good talk with him, and one of the most difficult parts for any of these content providing services that claim free speech is, where does that line go, and how do you manage that impossible problem? Because if you go far enough, it's illegal, right? Yeah.
So one thing that you can do is spend tens of thousands of dollars on inconclusive legal opinions. So you start with that. And then you find out, and this also matches your own research, but of course something you have to do is it's a bad idea to trust your own legal research, no matter how smart you think you are. Consult with the experts. So we got some very good lawyers. And I can talk about what they've advised us and how we've been accommodating it. I mean, in general, protocols aren't expected to have points of censorship, right? No one says, well, it's outrageous that SMTP, which powers our email, that the U.S. government can't step in. And some people would want that, but most people aren't upset that the U.S. government can't step in and delete your email, right? Most people aren't upset that the U.S. government can't just step in and delete a website. So it's important to remember that LBRY is more like that, right? While the first apps are made by us, there are going to be apps that aren't made by us. There's going to be there already are. There's going to be all kinds of different ways of using the network. We shouldn't be thinking of LBRY like, oh, it's a replacement for YouTube and there's just the one way of using it like there is YouTube. No, we should think of it as more like this protocol-based experience where things are interoperable, but there's multiple ways of interfacing with that.
And your group's software that runs on top of this doesn't have to be the only one.
That's right. That's right. So I'll get into the specifics of how we deal with illegal content if you want me. You want me to get into specifics?
I guess first tell me where your line is. So Nazis and Tifa punching Nazis, like where is the line? How do you kitty porn? Like,
right. So the company's line is if it's legal, it's welcome, and if it's not necessarily, we're going to put it in people's faces. I want to emphasize that for stuff that's legal but objectionable, we're very big on making sure that it's properly labeled, not shown by default, and an opt-in part of the experience. Okay. Anything that's illegal, we do our best to make sure that we're not hosting, we're not part of it. We maintain blacklists that software by default is subscribed to so that users do not accidentally access something illegal. And this is all part of trying to make sure that we're staying on the right side of the law, which is something that I take very seriously, because my personal morality of what's right and wrong might not match the law's definition of what's right and wrong. And my obligation as the CEO of a company is to follow the law. I can't run a company and not follow the law. So sometimes that does mean blocking something that I think probably, like, I'm morally okay with, right? Because it's like some 2-minute rock clip of a band no one cares about anymore. And it's like, really, I would be morally okay with that being on my service. But we've got to, you get a DMCA takedown, you put it on the blacklist, and it's not accessible.
Okay.
Right? Now, someone could alter the software, someone could run their own wallet server, someone could run their own full nodes and continue to access that content if other peers have it, but you're not going to get it through any of our software in its default configuration, and you're not going to get it from any of our web servers or any servers that we own.
So if somebody uploaded a copyrighted, let's talk about copyrighted content because it's so much more comfortable than the really nasty stuff. So if I uploaded a Metallica song, and where does that file go first? Whose servers does it land on? Because I'm assuming you're running the default server configuration that probably hosts most of the content up front.
Yeah, especially for stuff coming in through LBRY.TV, all that stuff first goes on one of our servers before it goes out to the peer-to-peer network. So when you click that, when you smash that publish button, what happens is first there's like an announcement that's basically made like, hey, this is a new thing. So there's some nodes who will like try to get new stuff because they're trying to essentially get a lot of stuff. So when you first click that publish, even if no one like proactively wanted to watch it right away, there usually are at least a couple of nodes that will try to get it. And then beyond that, once people actually start watching it, and there are tens of thousands of computers in the peer-to-peer network right now, anyone who accesses it is also going to be downloading it. We're also doing more and more with sort of proactive stuff. So that desktop client, you could say, I've got 20 gigabytes to help the network. You just use it the best you can. And so we'll be doing even more.
That exists now, or you're working on it?
That it doesn't work well. So
can I subscribe to my, like, hey, Larkin Rose was in the room right before. He talked to Larkin about getting him on LBRY. That might happen soon. So if I want to support Larkin's work and host that content, or become a node that hosts those videos, do I have that capability?
Yeah, you can. So you can follow Larkin. You'll get a notification either in the app, or if you're willing to give us your email, over email when something new is put out by a channel that you're following. And then you would still have to click the play button. There's not an automatic sync. Okay. We do, but this is an area of active development for us.
Okay. So step 2 then is you get a DMCA from Disney, whoever owns Metallica. And what then do you do, and how does that work?
Sure. So we get a DMCA, and we have a DMCA form. It's LBRY.com/DMCA. It's linked in our app. If we get a report, first we validate it. So they have to be from the rights holders. Basically, there's 2 ways that we can trigger a DMCA takedown for us. One is we get a report from a rights holder. The other is this sort of red flag standard, which is basically if someone in the company sees something that is supposed to be so obviously infringing.
Or terrible.
Yeah. Well, for that's whole different. So
really?
This is DMCA specifically. So this is just DMCA.
I was going to try and use this to cover both scenarios.
The blacklist, the way we handle it once it's blacklisted is similar. I'm saying our legal obligations to report. Like, we also have a legal obligation to report. It's not happened, child pornography, but it would. There is a that's true of everyone. If you come across child pornography, even as a citizen in America, I believe you are legally required to proactively report it. Certainly as a company you are. Look it up for individuals, but or don't. Probably don't actually. Yeah, don't put those terms in your browser history. But it's not a laughing matter on the whole. I want to say it's something I took very seriously. It's something we even have a philosopher on our advisory board, Michael Humer, and I don't think we're making it materially worse than the existing situation, like child. To the extent that it exists, like it exists. We have, it's not like we've seen them rushing on to LBRY, and I think what LBRY can do for the world offers a lot of good, and it would be a mistake to not, use any new technology simply because it could be done for something bad. But if we had launched the network and I had seen that it was, a lot of that stuff, we would all stopped our jobs. That's not what we're trying to do at all. And I could say fortunately, but it was actually what I expected. That 99.9+% is legitimate, great, completely legal stuff.
So the DMCA content gets deleted from your servers and added to a blacklist, and other servers that respect the blacklist will probably delete it from theirs as well. The client will no longer show blacklisted content, so it doesn't show up, but it's still there on the blockchain?
It's still there on the blockchain, and in terms of whether your client will show it, it depends. The web client won't. Your desktop client, if your desktop client is connected to a wallet server, it's up. That wallet server determines what's returned. Because it could also be legal, for example, like U.S. law is not international law, right? So if someone in another country wants to run a wallet server with a different set of laws where they might not be obligated to block certain content, that can happen. So LBRY, we're a U.S. company, we run some wallet servers, and so our wallet servers do not return content that's known to be illegal in the United States of America.
So this all sounds fantastic. So the people that have copyright stuff could still potentially use that and maybe create their own clients and stuff like that. And unfortunately, the bad stuff too. But you also have a way to exist in the current legal paradigm, which you have to. If you don't have a way to do that, then you don't really have a company.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wasn't interested in running a company where it had to operate anonymously or anything like that. I think it's really hard to grow and build when you have to have this whole OPSEC layer, especially, right? You need people who are good at marketing, right? You need people who are good at have other skills and saying, okay, I don't know, it totally wasn't, that's just totally not for me. I mean, I think what we're doing is completely legal. Our lawyers think what we're doing is completely legal. We get these, it's like, there's someone needs to have a name for this phenomenon where it's like this thing that's been happening for all time and that's been illegal for all time, and then there's this big moral panic because it's happening in a new way. I have this picture of a newspaper from the 1910s or 1920s when consumer cameras were first coming out, and there is a moral panic around something called a Kodak fiend. Can you imagine what a Kodak fiend is? These were people who would take pictures of people at public beaches, right? And it was in the newspapers. This was a big moral debate at the time as to, should you be allowed to take pictures in public? And in some places, there were laws passed that you couldn't take pictures in public. And eventually, courts ruled that, for the most part, in most cases, with some special exceptions, you can take pictures in public. But this was a big debate, and that's because cameras were a new technology. And we're probably going to see the same thing with blockchain. Like, we've already gone through it with the existing internet, but now it's the blockchain internet. And so we're going to relitigate all of these things that aren't really anything that aren't, yes, pictures are new from what came before, but someone could paint a picture, someone can stare at someone anyway. It's a panic over something new for the bad reasons before we see all of the good that it can do.
And I want to be clear, the reason why I bring this up is not because I'm fond of the terrible content. I bring it up because it is the best way to test a solution's ability to censor. So if you talk about things that people really want to say, like a lot of not a lot, but some will say, we're a censor-free, free speech platform, and then they'll even say that they don't have the ability to censor some kind of content. But then when you ask them about copyright, then they're like, oh yeah, well we have a way to get rid of that. And it's like, well then it's not censorship proof if you can do that, right? So his solution is the best you can have, where you are able to exist in the current legal atmosphere. And also provide the maximum freedom possible, I think is.
I think we're providing the maximum freedom possible. I think it's the freest way to share it. I think it's the most decentralized way to share it. That's another big one. These other free speech companies, it's like, where's the peer-to-peer app? You're pointing me to a website, and I support what they're trying to do. I'm not trying to dig on them. I like these free speech companies. They want to run things in a different way than Facebook is run, and I'm all for that. But in terms of accuracy, we just can't say that this stuff is actually decentralized or censorship resistant if the only way anyone uses it by typing in a website. And that's why we spent more than 2 years building out the full peer-to-peer ecosystem before we launched LBRY.tv.
And so the last thing I'd like to talk to you about would be the privacy aspect. Is it possible for someone to publish content anonymously?
This is perfect timing because actually coming up this week at our company is Privacy Week. So we are going to be emphasizing some privacy changes in terms of our design. I think we're already pretty good, but we're making some things more clear, and we're also making some changes around tracking of certain things. So the desktop release, the desktop client, by default, will not perform any tracking until you opt into tracking. Now, servers can still have logs. It's the equivalent. You've now reduced the problem to how do I perform a blockchain transaction fully anonymously, right? So if it's the same kinds of things, whether that's a VPN or doing it in a public network and then leaving or whatever makes you feel safe, but it's basically how can I submit a transaction to a blockchain network in a way that I feel is anonymous. In the LBRY case, it also needs to be around. You need to stay connected long enough for your content to get picked up. And so that means like the IP address could get logged in some places if you're performing that activity. We don't keep those logs indefinitely. And so it's basically that. If you can do that, you can publish anonymously.
So it's the same OPSEC as a Bitcoin transaction, basically, plus a little bit longer connectivity.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, guys, like I said, we interviewed the guy from DTube a while back on this channel, and it was pretty early in my adoption of DTube when we did that, and I didn't really follow up with you guys to tell you the difficulties that I had after that. I have been on LBRY. Disenthrall has been on LBRY for over a year now, and I have nothing bad to say about it especially now that you have the new website that doesn't download everything locally. My problem with the local client, as I'm sure you're aware, is like my mom would fill up her hard drive with stuff and not know what was happening, so my mother couldn't adopt it, and I wanted a solution that anybody could, right? No offense, Mom. You're my example for the normal user.
I didn't tell my mom to use LBRY until LBRY.tv existed. Completely true story. Like, not just saying that. I only started encouraging my mom to use LBRY like 4 months ago, and I've been working at the company for 3 years. Like, it's mom ready. It passes the mom test now. It didn't pass the mom test. This is actually a book called The Mom Test.
That's funny that you. So I just want to say, I really think that this is there now, and I've used it long enough to really kind of be able to start vouching for it. So I would really appreciate it if you check out our Disenthrall channel over on LBRY. Let us know. They can tip us, right? They can, and who earns money when people watch? How does that work?
But both the viewer and the creator can earn LBRY tokens right now. We're subsidizing it a little bit, just a couple of pennies, like not crazy money because that's not sustainable, but just a little bit to help the network grow and to help the network get started. I'll also say, maybe we can just put this in the description. There's also an invite link that your channel has that's specifically for your channel, and both you and the new joiner get a little bit extra if you come in via that invite link.
Well, that will definitely be happening. All right. Well, dude, thank you for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to what happens with LBRY.
Awesome. It was great to talk to you.